Welcome to Inspirational Journeys, everyone. My name is Ann Harrison, and today I'd like to introduce my special guest, Garry Cox. Welcome to the show, Garry.
Well, thank you, Ann. I'm very happy to be here.
So, why don't you start by introducing yourself to the listeners and viewers today?
Well, my name is Garry Cox, and I'm right now I'm a septuagenarian. Okay, I'm a poet and an actor, and probably some other things. but I've done a lot of writing in my life, but I never really had a voice until my wife passed in 2011, and I started a blog series called Bernice and Garry. And during the writing of that, just trying to create a picture of our life together, I found my voice. So I tell people, the first thing you have to do is find your voice. Um, Whatever that means. It means the authenticity, I think, that you can come up with once you find it. And once you find the voice, then the next thing, of course, is to find your audience, which I'm hoping this will help with today. But those are the two main concerns that I have. So I do a lot of writing for my blog series, which is GarryCox.com. And there are several components to that are kind of lengthy. To give you an example, I have one blog series called "What I Did on My COVID Vacation," and of course, since COVID is, I've wound it down, even though we still have COVID. But it sort of chronicles how I got through the pandemic, and if you don't mind my referencing some notes,
That's fine.
um,
While
the
you
when
go
you
ahead.
go to if you go to my website, GarryCox.com, you'll see you have the opportunity to take a look at what I did on my COVID vacation. I have a series called New Poets Wednesday, where I encourage people who are unpublished to email me their poems, and I publish them on my website. And an old one called Living a Dream, which I co-authored with a friend of mine, a training partner. We've been doing track and field together since I'm going to say 97. And then I've got the series Bernice and Garry. And there's actually a couple more there, but those are the primary ones that I've spent my time working on. And I'm working on a new book, but my latest book, The Waters of Appanoose County, 2020 Blues, is well, it's my latest, but it's the one I like the most too, because I put it together from a suggestion from a lady. I have these people who I don't know who have come to me and for a very small amount of money help me do all the things that I do. And one of the young ladies suggested that I do a book that was mainly filled with poems that I know people have liked. People have told me that they liked. So it's kind of like a pot boiler, and I put my more popular poems in there. But at the same time, I was writing a lot during the pandemic. So it's not just a pot boiler. It's a lot of what I was thinking about and going through during the pandemic. So I feel like it's still a um, very current and I hope meaningful book to other people who might read it.
Yeah, I've started reading Coffee with the Bard, and I was gonna read it in one sitting, but when your introduction, you said read a poem, select a poem to read with a cup of coffee. I'm like, okay, I can do this every day.
And I love that. First of all, I love it that you've read the book, but I love that you take that approach. And I don't think I mean, I'm not going against anybody's personal taste. If a person wants to read the thing cover to cover, I'm not going to stop them. But at the same time, I think poetry is best. You read a poem, you sort of digest it, and
Uh-huh.
then you move on to another one.
You know,
So whether you do it one a day or chunk it up, it's all right with me because people are different. People have different ways of intaking art and information.
and you'll be happy to know I got the audiobook on Audible.
Oh, bless you, bless you.
Yes.
You
I
have no
love
idea how excited I am about that because I wanted to do it. I really wanted to do it, and I have some reading and performing skills, but once we published it and once Amazon took over the publication of it, at first it was a deal where for an extra $3 you could get the audio book. But then I looked at Amazon and they don't mention the audio book. So I'm going around thinking, wow, that was half the reason. I thought that was
well,
going to be my marketing ploy.
what
But you've made a good start today. If anybody looks at this and they hear that you liked it, maybe we'll get some action there. It
yeah,
was a lot of fun.
yeah, and you know what? Me being totally blind, like I told you before, I am an audiobook connoisseur. And so far, I've only read that one poem. I had a what is it? I have a life. The very
Yes,
first
I
one.
had a life. Yeah,
I had a life.
I had a life. I had a wife. We had each other almost to forever. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the way you read that. Wow. And even my text to speech, my Amazon Echo device would not have done that justice like you did. So
Yeah, it
I'm just,
was from the heart. It was from the
and you know
heart.
what? You're talking to not only I'm not only a podcaster and an author, but I write poetry too. So you're talking to a
Uh-oh,
fellow poet.
that's
Yep. I got
well,
a
I'll try not
poetry
to
book.
act too grand and
Yeah, let's not, but I have a poetry book out too. We'll have to talk about that, you know,
well, I
after.
don't think you would qualify for New Poets Wednesday, but on the other hand,
I've had some fun.
sometimes you do something and you don't get the kind, you don't, like I've got a friend who teaches creative writing online. And of course, if you do that for a living, you kind of go from school to school or program to program. So there are times when he can provide me with poems, and there are times when he can't. And of course, I try to advertise as much as I can and get people to send me poems.
I
Every
got,
once in a while, we just run into a thing of like, "Hey, I got nothing for Wednesday," you know.
you know what though?
Um,
I'll send you some stuff because I've got some unpublished stuff that I've even. Does it matter if I've published it on my blog before or not?
yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Just I ask that people write a little. I don't want to work too hard. I'm lazy, but if a person if a person will just give me a short, and I mean short bio, I'm good
Oh,
with that. If I happen to know something about the person, I'll throw it in. But I'm not. I couldn't do this if I had to create a new bio for everybody that I featured. I would quit. That's too
no,
much
I
work.
can give you a bio. And this is not just for me. I know I'm kind of throwing my own plug in here, but this is for those of you who are poets out there. Giving some shout out to my friends Jen Lowry, Allie Hendricks. If you got poems and my friend Tish Bouvier, you want to send a haiku, um, get in touch with Garry.
Yeah, and it's very simple. The way it works best for me is if a person, a poet, just sends me an email form, and my email address is Garry L. Cox yahoo.com. And if you put it in that form, that way it's really easy to transfer to my website. I'm not too techy, you know. I've got a friend who wanted to include a little video with his, and I said, that's beyond my skills. You know, I'm happy to put your poem on, but I don't know about the video. Anyway, he and I are sort of friends. We're actors, and we're both in the same poem. I mean, the same play right now. It's a Wonderful Life. You remember that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do that every year, and he's a wonderful actor and a pretty good writer, but he had never written poems, and so little things like that. I mean, it's wonderful to discover that you're a poet, and wonderful that Bobby is a poet. And, my poetry life is getting bigger and bigger. Uh, if I could sell a couple of books along with it, we'd all be happy.
Yeah, I've told this story on the podcast before, but I don't mind sharing it again because I have to tell you this. I kept saying I can't write poetry. It's rare to write poetry. But my friend Jen Lowry from the Jen Lowry Writes podcast, I was listening to her podcast back in April of 2019, I believe it was. And one of the prompts, it started out as a 50-word short story. And she said something about the long narrow seashells that you find on the beach. She said her niece called those mermaid fingernails. And that kind of stuck. And I started out writing a 50-word story. Then the Lord showed me that, just inspired me. I was inspired to turn that into a poem. And then I ended up saying, I can't write poetry. It's rare to write rare for me to write poetry. But the Holy Spirit said, the more you can, they say you can't, the more you can. Because God, I couldn't, but God could. And I ended up writing 3 poems that day.
You know what? One of the things I would like to do with these podcasts, and especially with this one today, you're making a beautiful case for writing poetry, to encourage people to write poetry.
Yes.
Stories about people who thought maybe they weren't poets and turned out that they had a knack for it, or they liked doing it, or they wanted to expand themselves. Those are the golden stories, those are the ones that I want to share on my website.
Yeah. So do you want to share a writing challenge?
A challenge?
Yeah, or a prompt for the listeners and viewers today?
Can you flesh that out a little bit for me?
Okay, like for example, and I was just thinking, write a poem about, your experiences, write a poem about Christmas or a poem about a favorite experience, something like that. Those are prompts.
Oh, I would love to do that. I would love to do that. If it's funny you should mention that though, because primarily I've been a teacher my whole life, but I've done some other things. And I used to be a probation and parole officer. And so I got to I created some educational programs that people who have been either on probation or which means you don't go to jail, or parole, which means you've already been in jail. And it was an educational program. And when I started writing poems in my later years, as it were, I thought, well, I would like to get a contact with a prison system and see if, because I've actually taught in a prison, and I know that I would have encouraged any of my students to write poetry. And so what I am really wanting to do is to get my former employers, Rio Salado College, to give me an in at the prison. In this case, it would be Lewis Prison here in Phoenix,
Mm-hmm.
and encourage those people to send me some poems. I would like to reach out to anybody who either has written poetry, who wants to write poetry, and I don't judge. I don't look for this or that. You send me a poem, I will. I mean, I guess if you advocated the overthrow of the government, I might have to think
No,
twice.
I don't do that.
But at the same time, like I say, I don't judge. I don't know what's in a person's heart, and that's where you write from. So thank you for allowing me to give this big of a plug to what is now my favorite blog series that I have going, which is New Poets Wednesday.
No, this is about
So
you and your work. So, go right ahead.
that's great. That's great. So you'll be sending something, right?
Yeah, oh, I will. Definitely. I definitely will, because I have one about being thankful. I'm going to have to, I looked over and I'm going to have to edit it a little bit. But yeah, I definitely will send you something. Don't worry. And I will put and I will put a plug in the show notes too with your email address. I will definitely remember to do that. So, is there a process to your poetry? How do you get inspired to write poetry? I'm curious about that, because I can tell you my story too.
Well, um, this is one of those things where you say, do you want the short answer or the long answer? The long answer, which I think I can shore up for us. Uh, Believe it or not, started before I started school. Um, I would wake up in the morning and I would just have, I don't know, these thoughts would be in my head. And my mother, of course, was the first person I would see. And I would recite these, whatever they were, these ideas or these pictures. I didn't even know what a poem was. And when my mom called, she said, well, those are like little poems. I said, they are? What's a poem? You know? And so I didn't, I have that memory, but it didn't cause me to actually, when I started writing for real, when I started school, kindergarten and first grade and everything, I didn't know about writing poetry. I didn't even know I could write, you know, but I always think about that. And I have attempted many forms of writing. I've written plays. I got crime novels unfinished. I got science fiction, mostly unfinished. I sort of banged around as a writer until I wrote a couple of poems for a lady friend of mine. And I remember having a conversation with my daughter, and she said, you should write plays because you're really good at dialogue. And my friend said, yeah. She said, but to be honest, I think you're a poet. And sometimes that's all it takes. And this was much later in life. And so I decided, well, I've done everything else, so why not give poetry a shot? And then I realized that I always knew I had a knack for visuality and storytelling. The beauty of poetry is that it doesn't take you 2 years to finish a project.
No.
Sometimes I'll do a project in 2 minutes, and sometimes it'll take 2 months. But the beauty of it is I have it on my website, and I have this section, and I go to it, and I will go through all the little snippets. I have had, I've got one poem called, what is it called? I'd have to look at the book to get the name. Brain Mites, I think. Okay, I'm getting.
Well, you're doing that. You're
Well,
right.
I'm sorry. I thought I could get my hands on that.
No, you're
I
fine.
was just looking for the title, and I'm not finding it. But it was just a poem that I hate to be so what? So basic. But sometimes I've gotten up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and I swear to God, I get an epiphany between
Uh-huh.
the bathroom and going back to bed, and I will like charge into my work order room and pull up my website and fight to get that thing down. And sometimes I make it, and sometimes I don't.
You sound like
Uh,
me. Oh my
but
gosh.
I try never to let a good idea go to waste. And a lot of times it won't mean much. Even to me, it's just a snippet, you know. But I had this idea of, and I started calling these things brain mites, because
Uh-huh.
they would just pop in and out of my brain. And I created this fantasy world where they would talk to me and they would say, are you listening? Are you paying attention? You're going to lose us. You missed one. There goes another one.
If I was
So,
about to say, keep a notepad beside your bed so you can just
oh yeah, well, absolutely, absolutely. And I
or
wish
put
we'd had
notes
this
on your
discussion.
phone.
Yeah, I wish we'd had this discussion like 3 years ago or something. Because now I swear I've got if I can find one, I've got little notebooks. Can you see this?
I can't, but you can show it to the viewers there.
Okay. Anyway, they're small. I have these things all over the house. I've got them every place I sit down. Every place once I get out of bed, any place, and plus I've got a bedstand on the left side, a bedstand on the right side, notebook in each one of those. And then I say I probably have 5 or 6 notebooks just lying there waiting for me to throw something in there. So yeah, I'm determined to write more poetry, but it kind of keeps me, it makes me happy, and it kind of keeps me motivated. And sometimes I'll feel like, my gosh, you have not written a poem in quite some time. I said, well, you better go back and look through your stuff and see if there's an idea or something there. And what I found, which is kind of strange, sometimes I'll go through that particular part of my website and I will see a poem that's actually already written. For some reason, I didn't think it was complete, or I thought something had to be done to it. I'll say, well, wait a minute, with a little of this and a little of that, boom, I've got a whole poem there. So, it's kind of like the I don't want to bring religion into it, but it's kind
No,
of
go ahead. This is a faith-based podcast. I didn't know if you knew that.
okay. Well, there are passages or thoughts involved in spirituality
Mm-hmm.
that a statement that I've always liked is that you already have what your heart desires. You already have what your heart desires.
Sounds something
And
similar to
I
something
find
in the
when
song.
I go to like my website and I find a whole poem intact, I mean, I say, oh my gosh, it's true. I'm talking about, I don't have anything, yada, yada. But in reality, I do. There's probably 2 or 3 poems in there. And
Uh-huh.
and so I don't ever consider myself as at a loss or sorry that I spent so much time writing poetry. Uh, it's because I really believe that what I need to continue to do what I do is already here. I already have it. And I think that's something I would tell writers too. You probably, we talk a lot about, well, I got to develop my skills and I need more of this and I need more of that. And my feeling is, all you really have to do is write. You may have everything you need to be a writer, you know, but you won't be a writer if you don't write.
That's so true. And I'm gonna tell you, my poetry comes in season. And you're talking about getting an idea for a poem in the bathroom. I call my bathroom my inspiration chamber because that's where a lot of my ideas come
Yeah.
to me. I just thought I'd have to share that because it's really that's an interesting thing. But yeah, I haven't written a poem since last month. And last year there was a time during the winter I could write, you know, work on my book, work on my novels and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But my poetry, I have a poem called My Poetry Season. Has My poetry season, I think it is. I have to look it up. But yeah, in February of this of 2021, that's when I wrote my first poem this year because I felt like I was, I I was cooped up in the house and couldn't get outside. But now, if I'm
Yeah.
sitting outside, I will write. Sometimes I'll write a haiku on my phone and put it on social and put it in
Right.
with my other haiku. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it.
And just so people will know, if you send a poem to me for New Poets Wednesday, I will not only put it on my website, it will be published on social media as well.
Okay. What socials are you on? Because well, we'll get to that in a minute. Because I was going to ask where can people find you online? Because I don't have your social links. Um, but yeah. So there's one question that I normally ask my guests at the beginning, but we got on off on poetry, and I did not ask you this. What inspired you to become a writer? Now you got me curious.
Um, I wish I had a more inspiring story, but the truth is, I was encouraged by my English teachers when I was very young, and I've always known that I had a talent. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I've always known, I always, I was like a C plus, B minus student, except for English, where I got all straight A's, um, until I got all the way to be a senior in high school. And I bet this girl $5 that I could get straight A's. And my English teacher gave me a B plus. I said, "How can you do that to me? You cost me $5." And her rationale was, "Well, you've been good for a long time, but I grade on improvement. And you haven't really improved since last year." And I said, "Dang, you are hard. That is a that's a hard judgment." But it was really fun. And I tell people that I'm from Appanoose County. I consider myself the Bard of Appanoose, and when I talk about Appanoose County, I talk about the fact that everybody I knew could write. I also tell them that in a school of maybe 130 students, I was maybe the third best writer in the class. That's how good the Iowa system was at the time I was growing up, you know, and I was happy to say that because the people that I thought were better writers were really good, you know. And one of them, one of my close friends, went on to write, I think, like 17 crime novels published and everything, you know. Another one does a lot of um, writing for publications, magazine writing, and not so much now. It's not so easy to do that kind of work now. But he's working. He's almost as old as I am, and he's working on a screenplay. And I part of it I think is you if you're around writers, which is kind of what I'm looking for when I do the New Poets Wednesday. I just want to encourage people to be around writers and express themselves. And of course, you get a chance if you go through. Well, actually, you don't have to go to the website. You can respond to any poem that you read and say, "Hey, that was pretty good," or "That made me feel a certain way." Um, it's just kind of a package.
Mm-hmm. You got me. I'm listening, but you've also got me. My brain firing. It's like, which poem do I send? Because I have a few that I want to send to you.
That'll be great.
Oh my
That'll be
gosh,
great. I
you
give
got me
full
in
credit.
tune.
You can just tell people I give full credit and I don't judge.
Well, I appreciate that. I know you just told people about that because when you said it here on the podcast. That's amazing. Okay, so now here comes the question. Where can people find you online?
Okay, you can find me online at GarryCox.com. That's my website.
Okay.
Okay, and everything that I've mentioned, everything we've talked about is on my website. And you can send me poems that I will publish on my website and with social media at my email address, which is, now this one I spell out for people because, if they want to use it, I don't want them to not be able to. So all lowercase letters with no dots until the end. So it's just GarryCox at yahoo.com.
Okay, I will definitely add that to the show notes. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's my email address, and that's the preferred form for me to get a poem. If you send it to my email address, I'll know pretty fast if I'm going to have to restructure. I don't know. Sometimes, for example, I know that my computer provider will sometimes publish my poems, but they don't make any effort to publish it the way it was written. It will be written in sentence form and as though it were all like a story or something. I mean, it is a story, but with poetry, the visuality, how a poem looks on a page, is half the battle, And I use very little punctuation, because my feeling is that one line should lead to another line, and I shouldn't have to explain it by hooking it together through normal punctuation.
You're right.
If you read a poem, if you read one of my poems, you'll see that it's each line is, I don't even capitalize a new line, until when I get to the end of a thought, then I might use a space, and to start a new, what would you call it, a new stanza. But I think it's one of my strong points, because it allows me to give you a complete visual reference or a complete idea, and just know that you can stop right there at the end of the line and then go on to the next one you want to. The only thing is, that's got to be formatted. So sometimes I will format something for a person who writes the poem, because I don't think that my computer has formatted it the way that it should be. But that's as much fussing as I do over a poem. I just want to make it look good, and sometimes I may have an idea to make it look better than maybe your idea. But I found that the stronger the poet is, the less I've got to do. And it's just easier for me to work on an email and transfer it to my website and make the final changes there. And I don't mean changes necessarily, but take the last look at the poem on my website, because that shows me exactly how it will look when the public gets a chance to read it.
Right.
So I do what I can do to make a poem look good, not because I like it better than another poem, just because it's what I do. And I think I have a feel, a sense for what a writer's trying to do. I've been around this for a long time, and I love doing it. So,
Wow. Yeah. And I was gonna ask you, do you want the poem sent as Word attached, as Word documents attached to the email, or do you want it just sent?
I would, I would prefer it attached as a Word doc.
Okay.
That's the easiest way,
Okay. Yeah.
because that's how I have done most of my writing, and so I relate to that. You could probably get it on the face of the email itself, you know, but it's more difficult. And Word gives you a lot of potentiality that you're not going to have if you try to just put it on
Yeah.
the
Because
face of an email.
right, because just putting it in the body of an email that messes with format. It throws your formatting off too. But
Exactly, exactly.
that was a question I had in case, well, for me and for others who want to submit poems.
It's a great question. I'm so happy you asked it, because I often don't mention that. I say, well, send me a poem. And I ask people to do the attachment thing, but I don't explain why I want it that way or anything. So I appreciate the opportunity to actually explain how it's better for both of us, by the writer and me, if you do an attachment.
Okay. Well, so any final thoughts before we close?
Uh, yeah, you got to find, first of all, you got to write. And then you've got to find your voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't find my voice until my wife passed in 2011.
Wow.
And writing about our life together, I found my voice. And it's not just my poetry voice, it's my prose voice. It's different. It's more, I mean, it's personal, it's me, and I like it. And so now that does not have to take you 40 years. It could take you 4 months, you know. But I'm just saying, you got to find your voice, and then of course the tough one, which God bless people like yourselves with the podcast, because you aid so much in this. You got to find your audience.
Exactly. That's another thing too, because you got to find the audience. And another thing that a friend of my author coach and friend Jen Lowry has told me, you got to do what brings you joy.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Because
And I tell people, if you haven't tried poetry, why not give it a shot?
I didn't think I could do it, but I can't do
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
Keep going,
Hey,
baby.
look, I can do it. And, how hard could it be?
Yeah, I know, right? I can't, but God can. Okay, so we challenge you today to go out there and read to get inspired, write something inspiring, and share your creation with the world. For when you've touched one life, you've touched thousands. Thanks for joining us on Inspirational Journeys, and have a blessed day, everybody. And remember, your story matters.